So today's meeting is about the elephant in the room in a different manner. It's about positive facts that consultants should be obsessing over during this crisis and the benefits that came out of this crisis. And so I prepared a short little video, which is sort of an overview as opposed to an introduction. Talked about how COVID-19 has really brought us together. And whether or not you have survived or thrived in what's going on is how you're going to focus on the future, because we're never going to return back to quote unquote normal. It's going to be a new normal. And this is the first time in certainly our history that there has been a melting pot. And it doesn't matter your gender, your religion, your social status, your orientation, what you do for a living, whether you've got a job or you're a retiree, shift has clearly
Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
So as an example, I have written a new book. This is not intended as a self-promotion, but an opportunity. And let me explain. The book is on Amazon, and it talks about how to reinvent yourself. But in the book, there is a one-on-one
Your participant ID
opportunity.
by pound. Otherwise, just press pound.
So the net result is that if the book sells well, and New York Times is 5,000 copies, that's 2,500 hours of consulting that I have committed to. Well, clearly I can't do that by myself, but I'm fortunate enough to know additional consultants and advisors who all have areas of specialization that can augment and supplement the offer. There's no charge. I'm not asking for anything back from you other than a commitment that if we send you someone and you accept to coach them, that you will coach them for 30 minutes without trying to do a heavy-handed sales pitch, but guide them, give them some thoughts, give them some ideas on how to move forward. And the premise of the book is simplified in really a simple statement. And the statement is this: I believe how you think is more important than what you think. And there's a process that I use, and that's what this meeting is all about. I am pulling back the curtain behind the Oz and showing you how I have done this for a vast number of clients who have all brought me in because most of them either had a problem they couldn't solve, had a silo they couldn't get out of, had resources that had been depleted, and we somehow still came up with the answer. So today, the purpose of this is to enhance your thinking skills, to help increase your ability to see and develop innovations, to become more sustainable. And when I say more sustainable, I firmly believe that when we get out of this wave, and I hope I'm wrong, I think there's going to be another one. I think there's so much pressure to come back to work that we are going to come back and there's still going to be atypical or even carriers that are out there, and it's going to come back again. And I hope I'm wrong. I don't have a medical degree. I am just watching like everybody else and praying that I'm wrong. So the first thing I think you should do is you should reactivate any existing projects. You know your clients are home right now. They are working remotely. I would reach out to everybody that you've done business with in the last 10 years, remind them who you are, what you do, and offer to have a chat. I think that you have a discussion about how innovation is going to bring about more millionaires after COVID-19 than we saw after the 2008 recession, because the 2008 recession was not worldwide. It was only in the United States. This is worldwide. So there's going to be a lot of very bright people, a lot of very aggressive people trying to figure out what's the new next. And they're all going to be looking for solutions. And when they're looking for solutions, they're looking for assistance, and that's what we provide. We provide a fresh set of eyes, and we provide an opportunity to vet ideas when we work in collaboration. And in doing that, we also start to look at how we come up with new resources. And let me explain new resources. To me, it can often be an existing resource that's been deployed in a different manner. So it's not necessarily going back and coming up with something brand new, but maybe a new application for something that's already there. And I think as we come out of this, we have to remember that we need to be better consultants. We have to have positive thoughts. We have to know that we are bringing to our potential client customer a clear head and a model of forward progress. And that means you've got to shift your thinking. And in shifting your thinking, you're going to be able to seize opportunities. You're going to redefine those resources. And along the way, hopefully we'll have a few smiles. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I have been privileged to work with some of the biggest and most progressive companies in the country. And the diversity of what I've been able to work with has run the gamut from the Department of Defense to the Cremation Association, from car dealerships to casinos, from retailers to cosmetics. And it's given me a way to establish a thinking process that is the amalgamation of how all of these leaders got to lead. So let me tell you my first story and how this all came about. When I was 7 years old, I went to my mother and I said, I'd like an allowance. My mother said, go talk to your father. So I went to my father and I said, I'd like an allowance. He goes, go talk to your mother. At 7 years old, I got my first business lesson, and that is get all the decision makers in the room at the same time. So now I had my mother and father in the room, and they clearly were unified in the fact that I was not going to get an allowance. But they started throwing out suggestions. Wash the car, walk the dog, mow the yard, open up a lemonade stand. Well, the lemonade stand kind of appealed to me, and I went outside. And we lived in an area in a town called Park Forest, which at the time was a very white-collar community filled with professionals. And our area was doctors, lawyers, and accountants, and every single driveway had a lemonade stand. Dozens of them were lined up. And as I walked around, I started to discover that not only were there lemonade stands, but there were experiential lemonade stands. There were places to sit, to chat. They were selling cookies, they were selling candy, they were selling lemonade. And clearly the competition was pretty hefty. So my second business lesson was be the best at what you do or sell to those that are. And I went back home and I went to my room. As my mother used to tell the story, Jim was in his room for several hours and he came out wanting to go to what was called Shopper's World. It was a precursor to a Costco's or a Sam's Club. And at Shopper's World, I had my list. And what I had done is I had broken down the components of lemonade stands. First of all, they needed lemonade. Most of the mixes needed sugar. And they needed cups. So those were the three basic components that everyone, no matter how big or how small they were, needed. And I reasoned that if they were successful, Mom was going to have to go to a store and buy more lemonade, more sugar, more cups. What if I made it easy? So I went and got some Ziploc bags and I made lemonade kits by taking lemonade and sugar and X number of cups. So I had figured out that each packet would serve, let's say for conversation, 25 servings. So my kit included the lemonade, the sugar, the bags, and 25 cups. I did this at night. I did this in the cool of the evening. And I went door to door and said to the mothers, do you need a lemonade kit? I'm sure some of them bought it because they felt sorry for me. I'm sure that others bought it because there was indeed a necessity. But at 7 years old, the end of my summer, I had $351 in the bank. While I don't know for sure, I think that's more money than any of the lemonade people were making on their own. So what did I learn? You break the problem into its components, you reorder the components, you monetize it, and then you go out and deliver it. So at 7 years old, I kind of set the tone for becoming a serial entrepreneur. Now, being a serial entrepreneur has its risk rewards. And sometimes you kind of take a risk without really thinking about anything but the end of it. So when I was in law school, we had a study group. And in the study group, there was a gentleman who had a part-time job as an insurance adjuster for the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. And he called me up one day and he said, listen, I'm not going to be able to make Saturday's meeting because I have to go out and adjust a railroad car. Now, I had no idea what that meant. But what he explained is that there was a railroad car that had gotten misplaced. Now, how do you replace a 60-foot railroad car? Well, if you've ever been to a switching yard is hundreds of acres of railroads filled with railroad cars. So when a train comes in, let's say the train is going from east to west, but some of the things need to go south at some point, that train pulls into a switching yard. They take off those cars, move them off the train, put them off to the side, rejoin the train, and send the train on its way. They then wait for the train that's going south, and they rejoin that car with the train that's going south. So my friend and I went out, we found the railroad car. We had to go back and get some bolt cutters. We went back, we opened it up, and we found that the railroad car was filled with Chef Boyardee spaghetti sauce. Now, I don't know how many of you have thought about a railroad car load of spaghetti sauce, but here I am, 104 degrees, summer afternoon, staring at this railroad car, and I turned to the guy and I said, so now what? We found the car. What are you going to do? He says, well, I got to find somebody to buy it. I need to convert this to cash. I said, well, what would you take for it right now, in this heat, right this minute? He goes, $5,000. I said, sold. Now, maybe my mouth moved before my brain engaged, but I looked at the size of this car and I figured there had to be a way to make money selling off this spaghetti sauce. Now, a fair question is, would I do that today? And the answer is yes, because a railroad car is also called a boxcar. And the boxcar became the entire basis of 3D thinking. looking inside the box. So if I'm looking inside the box and I see a railroad car filled with spaghetti sauce, is it fair to say I got to start thinking a little differently? And that is the process behind 3D thinking. And let me take you through this step by step. 3D thinking starts off with a simple premise. 3D is a pyramid, equal sides. Pyramids have withstood time because they are unilaterally strong on every side. One is not weaker than the other. And I identified the process as depth, distance, and determination, the 3Ds. Let me break it down for you. Here's our box. So the depth side is that you go inside the box and investigate what's inside the box. Well, we know it's a railroad car filled with spaghetti sauce. We start to come up with an identification of where was it going? Why is it here? Who would want it? How much is there? What are the problems associated with it? And you start to break up the components and start to formulate ideas. So let me walk you through that again. You investigate, you come up with the identification of the components, and then you start to create ideas. And ideas can be as simple as sitting down, writing them yourself, getting together a group. And I knew that I had a study group, and the study group was going to be meeting. So I reasoned that if these guys and gals were smart enough to get into law school, they might be bright enough to help me figure out what to do with this product. So I immediately called the study group and I invited them to my house for the meeting because I offered them free pizza and free beer. And most study groups didn't have the money to do that. Now remember, it's going to meet in a couple of days, but I've still got to figure out, once I've got this idea, where am I going with it? So the distance is the innovative part. Now let's use the metaphor of being inside the box. If you're inside the box, you get a 360-degree look at the marketplace. And so while the ideation may have said, where was it going to? The innovative problem solving is, can I sell it to them? Are they still buyers? Are they still going to buy it if I can come up with a compelling reason? And the way to initiate that is to start to put together those resources of figuring out how I'm going to take it that distance. And the last part of the distance is, do I have the bandwidth? Do I have the resources? Do I have the time to implement these ideas? So 3D thinking is depth, go inside, distance, how far can you take it, and determination, what are you going to do with it once you've got the idea? Now let's go back to the spaghetti sauce. How much spaghetti sauce is really there? Well, I couldn't take it out and count it, but what I did is I started to figure out the square volume of one carton. And then I rationed that there's 128 ounces to a gallon. There's actually 107 ounces to a number 10 can, and each can weighs about 6 pounds. In a 60-foot trailer, that's what we had there, it would hold about 100 tons of product at a cubic capacity of a little over 6,000 square feet. So the simple math, because I'm a simple kind of guy, is that I had about 33,000 gallons of pasta sauce. Now I know what you're thinking. This guy's an idiot. How is he going to unload 33,000 gallons of spaghetti sauce? Now that's a fair question. I'm now going to apply 3D thinking. Now, remember I went out on a Thursday. Friday, the phone rings. Mr. Feldman, yes. This is the rail foreman at the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. Did you buy this railroad car? Yeah, I did. He goes, great, move it. What do you mean, move it? Well, you didn't think you were going to let it sit here. Well, guys, I have to tell you, it hadn't even occurred to me that I had to move it. And he started to explain to me that to move a railroad car, you needed a locomotive, you needed a caboose, you needed an engineer, you needed a trainman, you needed a conductor, and you needed the easement rights to move that train, because as soon as you have a locomotive and a caboose, it's called a train, you have to have the easement rights to move it. So here I am thinking to myself, whoa, I paid $5,000 on Thursday and I got to move it on Friday. So I sort of fell back on my sword and said, look, this is the first time I've ever done that. I really hadn't thought this through. Is there anything you could do to help me out? And he's laughing. He goes, well, how'd you get the money? I said, well, I'm a photographer and I had photography equipment. And when I told the bank I wanted to borrow $5,000, they laughed at me. But I was persistent and I basically said, how about if I bring in the camera equipment, which is worth more than the $5,000? So they took every piece of camera equipment I had, locked it in the vault, gave me the $5,000 and told me that I better come up with something because they were going to have to get their money back in a relatively short period of time. I believe they used the line before the bank examiners show up. So now I got the money, I got the railroad car, I got the guy on the phone, and after telling him the story, he says, look, kid, I'm off until Wednesday. This is your lucky day. I have some extra days off, so I won't be back to work until Wednesday morning. Figure it out. Good luck. Have a nice weekend. Now, for a moment, think to yourself, what would you be doing? What would you be doing if you were told, now what? So I focused on the study group. Now, knowing that the study group wouldn't have any more expertise than I had, I said, look, what I really want to do is use their brains to come up with an evaluation of the situation and start to formulate a plan. So I laid it out. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? What are the choices? The timing is clearly Wednesday morning. What are the priorities? The priorities are sell it. I don't want to own it. I don't want to just figure out where to move it to. I want to get rid of this problem. And now I'm almost focused on getting my $5,000 back because I may have made a stupid mistake. What are my liabilities? I'm selling a food product. Well, the product is not mine. It's in a box. It's in a can. It's probably okay. You know, they've shipped this product before. What is going to be the ROI on my money? But more important, what's going to be the return on ideas when I meet with the study group? I've got to keep them focused. And because I'm an entrepreneur, I then kind of sat back and said, what's the future impact of all this? Well, gee, if I can figure out how to sell this and make some money, I probably want to do it again because it's fun, it's challenging, and hopefully profitable. So what do? I sit down and I come up with this and I put it on a place card for everybody at the study group. And it says, it's about our ability to imagine what has never existed or shift our focus. To everyone that's on the call today, that's the mantra of coming out of this pandemic. That's the mantra of what we're going to celebrate after COVID-19. We're going to have a clear vision, a level playing field. We're going to have the ability to see where we haven't seen before. We're going to have the ability to look through a different set of lenses and imagine what we haven't thought of before. So here we are with a railroad car filled with spaghetti sauce, which represents approximately 33,000 gallons. So the group starts to focus on where it's going to. And we reason that if it's that much pasta sauce, it's going to a military base. It's going to a university. It's going to hospitals. It's going to prisons. It's going to distributors, and then we had a bunch of other ideas. Well, that's a pretty broad group to go after. So as we're making the list, I started to figure out where some of these opportunities would exist. So the first one is I went to the military. Military guy loved it. He loved the idea so much that he basically said, I'll give you $2 a gallon. Now remember, I've got 33,000 gallons. So he's offering me $66,000 for a $5,000 investment. Can you imagine the gloat, the toe curling, the attaboy I'm giving myself on making 66,000, netting 61,000. But my new rule of business, and for something that all of us have experienced, it's the ubiquitous yes, but. And in this case, it was yes, but I need your GSA number. Well, if you don't know what that is, the government requires any vendor to register with the government. Money laundering, safety, etc. And the guy says, you don't have a GSA number? I said, no. He says, well, I'll mail you the paperwork. And you mail it into DC. DC will send you a number in a couple of weeks. I quickly explained to him that I didn't have the time. I thanked him very much, and I decided to move on. So who did I move on to? Next one on my list. Next one on my list was a hospital. Guess what? Prisons. They all offered $2 to $3 per gallon. Well, why didn't I sell it? Surprise, surprise. There's my money again. I needed a GSA number. So all of those where it's going to became impossible to deliver to. So I reversed it. I went the other direction. Where was it coming from? Well, clearly I knew where it was coming from. It was coming from Chef Boyardee. So I contacted Chef Boyardee, and I found out, and I would say in a rather clever way, by talking to the assistant to the product manager. And she revealed that she was a temp. And she really didn't have much information, but when I told her a little bit of a white lie that as I was a student trying to come up with the manufactured costs of, say, a commodity, and I thought that the commodity was something like pasta sauce, it would be great if she could give me a little bit of information. I'm not going to compete. I just needed this for my paper. Turns out she indeed was a college student. She understood the problem. She did a little homework, and she came back and she says, well, it's the end of the quarter and it looks like there's a report and I found your product and it's a little over $3 a gallon to make. Does that help you? Absolutely. May I speak to the product manager? Well, he's in a meeting. He should be back shortly. Put me on hold. I want to be the first call he takes. Well, I don't know how long he's going to be. I understand. Put me on hold. Well, you may be on hold a long time. I understand. I am willing to do that. So she and I chatted for a while and we waited for him to come back. I explained to him what I had and he very quickly said, I'll give you $1.50 a gallon. Now, $1.50 a gallon means that my loss, think what I just said, from 66,000, which is the benchmark number I had from the military, had dropped to 49.5. Now, if I had started at 49.5, I would have been happy. But I'm greedy. I did not want to take 49.5. Why? Because The 49.5 less the 5,000 meant that my net was $44,500. So I said no. Think about it for a second. If you were in my shoes, why would you say no? And clearly, if you were my banker, you would never loan me money again because I'm reckless. I'm a risk taker. And I would make $44,500 for 5 days work, and I'm turning it down. Why? Think about it for just a second. Why? The answer's been here the whole time. But I will tell you that most of us will not intuitively come up with the answer. If they're going to give me 44.5 net, what are they going to give me for the railroad car? That's right, the boxcar. The boxcar itself has value. Now, I know most of the people here are not in the business of buying boxcars, but let me tell you, a boxcar today is between $135,000 and $200,000. In '69, when I did this, I would guess it was about 75,000. So I accepted 30. Now my total profit is $74,500. And we had a deal. We had a deal. He was going to make the arrangements to move the car. He was taking the contents intact. He was taking the boxcar, and he agreed to wire me the money. Now, what did I do? I gave $5,000 to the adjuster, the kid, the student, my friend, who took me there. Why? Because if I could make that kind of money off of one boxcar in a few days, I was willing to try it again. And now I had seed money. Now I had enough money that I didn't have to go back to the bank. I had some experience in going through the 3D thinking process, and I could see how it worked. But that's not all. If I was going to be in the salvage boxcar business, I needed one more component. How did I know? Go back into your 3D thinking, go inside the box, look at all the components. The components was the boxcar. The components were the contents of the boxcar. The components were the adjuster. And the components were the manager at the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe switching yard. I went to him and gave him $5,000. Now, we can talk about the ethics of it or anything else, but that's for a different time. Each of them got $5,000. Incredibly generous. How did I come up with the $5,000? Because they knew that I had spent $5,000 to get the boxcar, so it was very reasonable to give them the same amount. At the end of the day, I cleared $64,500. Absolute true story. Absolutely the way I have come up with thinking inside the box. Now, how do you do that? So I've put together a little piece of paper for you. And for those of you that are on the phone, just draw a line down a piece of paper north to south and draw another line across the paper east to west. And the answer to all of this is that you come up with a way to evaluate your options. So option one after COVID-19 is going to be coping mechanism. And a lot of those people I consider to be bad customers. They're people who don't really care for our solution. They don't understand the problem. And my suggestion is you move away from them. Now, how do you use this little chart or the lines you've drawn on the paper? You write down all of your suspects. A suspect is the world in which you live. A prospect is a suspect who has said, I'm interested in who you are. On a Post-it note, you write the name of those individuals who you call prospects. And you're going to put them in one of these four quadrants. Quadrant number one gets the bad customers, the people that are really not very, very good opportunities for you. Option number two are those people who have at least said they're adaptable. They're adaptable. They want a solution, but they don't understand the problem. And you're going to help them by using 3D thinking and help them adapt. Your job in that case is education. They're risky because the education process may be more than they can handle or absorb or have time for, but at least there is some opportunity to get paid for your wisdom. The third option is the group that see opportunity. They want a solution, but they may be a little clouded in the identification of the problem, which is how we use the 3D thinking to go inside the box. So I put these into the sales funnel. I put them into the bottom right quadrant of this little chart because they are promising customers. And as a promising customer, I'm going to spend more time focusing on them than focusing on the risky customer or the bad customer. But the most important group is the one that's in the upper right side. And that's option 4. Those are the people who not only want a solution, they understand the problem, and they recognize your wisdom. And so option 4 is the model customer. It's those people who are willing to shift, those people who are willing to act, those people who are willing to pursue what we're doing, how we're doing it, when we're doing it. You are in the consulting business. Let me point out to you the obvious. Number 1, you still have a job. Number 2, customers and people are in dire need, and we, as consultants and advisors, are in the helping business. We charge for our wisdom. Unlike other places, number 3, your critical supplies are in stock. You're it. And you can manufacture your products anywhere. Most of you have been remote working anyway, so this stay at home wasn't new news. You've already got your setup, your area of working. You understand what are the good news, bad news from working from home. Your business, even if you previously worked in an office, easily transforms itself into a home environment. And you know, if you're looking for staff, it's a great time to staff up. Lots of people are out of work. Lots of people looking for jobs. Lots of talented people, which means you now have the ability to not only hire staff, but you can take on bigger work. If your client workload has softened, which most of us have, you're now gifted with the time you've always wished you had to tackle big, firm growth projects. Hunt the elephants, not the rabbits. You now have what I consider to be the perfect storm for consultants and advisors. You and I hopefully are safe and healthy. You're socially distanced. You got scrubbed hands. You've been committing to safeguarding yourself and your community, and you have now reached out to your family, your friends, and even your faith to understand that normal is not going to be what it was, but it's going to be a new normal. And the new normal requires consultants and advisors. End of the day, COVID-19 is positive for us. We have all possessed positive thoughts and positive approaches, and that has helped us stay centered and grounded. And moving forward, we can help other consultants in the community. We can share our uplifting perspective. And that's why when I wrote the book and came up with the competitive differentiation of offering consulting, I thought my friends who are consultants can benefit from this as well, because I love being part of your community. I've got a couple of things in closing to help you move forward. Number one, be a risk taker, not a caretaker. Now is the time. Now is the time, because if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it otherwise. You need to embrace and drive change by going back to your previous clients and customers and seeking new ones. Hopefully, I've given you some ideas to engage in 3D thinking. And I ask for a small favor. Please promote this to your social media, to other people, because for me to reach the New York Times bestseller list, I have to have 5,000 copies sold. But you benefit from it, because if 5,000 copies are sold, that's 2,500 hours of coaching that I'm going to have to parcel out. And so at any point in time, drop me an email at jfeldman@shifthappens and say, I'm interested. We will link up. I will add you to the list. And as we get these opportunities, pass them along. I'm not asking for any fees. I'm not asking for shared revenues. I am accepting tips and commissions should it turn to be fortuitous. I think you need to be adventurous, creative, and open-minded. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. It's time to pursue growth and learning. I want you to go out and start to create a bigger community with open and honest relationships. It's time for community collaboration. Everyone on this call should be trying to refer business to other people on this call when it doesn't fit your wheelhouse. But we can keep it within our community and we can all benefit. And I think that we've all learned with this shuttering down that we can build a positive team and we can enhance our family unit. You now have had time to reconnect with your kids, with your parents, with your neighbors. Don't lose it. We are going to be in this mess, no matter how much we plan, for a long time. We have 30 million people as of today that have filed for unemployment. We have over 1 million people who have died. This is a level playing field, but we can't lose sight of the benefits that have come out from it. We've learned how to do more with less, and we become passionate and more determined to change how we think. And when that's all done, let's all make shift happen. Some of it is happening to us, but a lot of it is stuff within our control. I appreciate your time. We've got time for questions and answers. I want to open it up and offer the opportunity for a dialogue, because the journey to bright ideas is often a lack of determination, a lack of preparation, business as usual, etc. It's time to do what if, what's next, what's possible, and why not. And for those of you that are on the screen, there is my email. The book is available on Amazon, and if you want to refer to it, it's jfa.tips, TIPS /Amazon. My email is jfeldman@shifthappens.com.